Okay, let's move on.
Let's talk about something we know about. Oh, education.
Okay, no, we got the drug issue. And I know you've been working on it, I've been on it. And one of the problems, and before we get into the addiction problem, I'd just like to bring up a point. That's what we hear. Everybody's addicted. We get all, why? 80% of the heroin that's being sold in this country is coming from Mexico. Because we have an open border. Used to be heroin was mainly for the upper middle class and the rich. Now it's everybody because it's cheap. It's coming from Mexico. It can be easily stopped. We can work with Mexico to get rid of the poppy fields, but our government isn't doing that. So we have an addiction problem. So I guess that's something we really need to focus on. So I know you've been involved with this, so and I've also, so let's.
I introduced a bill, which was House Bill 1626, which was similar to, I think people have heard about the Gloucester model, Gloucester, Massachusetts, where it gave the law enforcement the opportunity to waive any criminal charges if a person walked into the police station or any wherever the community decided this would be set up. They could have a drug take back program where the person would walk in, hand over whatever drugs they had, whether it be prescription drugs that belonged to them, prescription drugs that didn't belong to them, or illicit drugs. They could hand it in, get that stuff off the street, and they could ask for help, and they'd have a path for recovery. There'd be someone there that could help them. You were a co-sponsor of this bill, and initially it started off as, it shall be made available, and then the Criminal Justice Committee didn't like the shall, so we made it may. So it was basically an opportunity for towns to embrace this if they wanted to, but it wasn't forced upon anybody. And for some reason, the Police Association came out really strongly against it and kept saying it was a mandate, even though it wasn't a mandate. It was an option. And they kept saying it over and over. The police chief from Bedford was on TV coming out against me saying this was a terrible bill and that drug dealers were going to use it to not be prosecuted, and it wasn't even possible for that to happen the way that this was written. So basically it would have been that the community, say it was Litchfield, established a place, maybe not the police station, maybe your CVS or someplace else, where they had a secure drop box for drugs. They would walk in, drop them in, and say, I need help, and they would have someone there that could make a few phone calls for them and get them someplace for recovery.
Yeah, I know. In Litchfield, we have a drop-off, which is amazing. Bedford also has a drop-off box, but they don't have the second step of where can I go for help.
Well, they seem to think that they couldn't accommodate a drop-off box, what he kept saying.
Well, Bedford's got one. Bedford had one before.
I'm just telling you what he said.
I know it. I've seen it. I'm going, wait a minute. I go there a lot.
It was all...
Because we have meetings there, the Hillsborough County meetings, and we have them at the safety annex there.
Yeah, he was saying things when they interviewed him for NH1, like if I pull over a drug dealer, he's got a drug, he's got a car full of drugs, he can say, hey, I was on my way to the police station. I was like, no, it doesn't work like that. No. And B, I think that's pretty obvious. You could say, yeah, no, that's not going to work out for you. One
thing is good, and I think it started in Pennsylvania, but I've heard that coroners and even this state are looking into doing that, where if coroners, if somebody dies from an overdose, they're going to call it murder. So then you go after the dealer, and it's now murder and that's the way it should be. And it started, I believe I heard on the news in Pennsylvania, some coroner was doing that. He's calling it murder. The cause of death was murder. And I think that's what should be done for drug dealers. It should be attempted murder if you're caught selling drugs.
Right.
Not like Obama did, who released 30,000 of them because he said, these were victimless crime. I mean, these weren't violent crimes. Bull crap.
No. Yeah. And I think the problem is you hear a lot of people say we can't arrest our way out, and then at the same time, the only solution they want to hear is how to arrest more people. They were so opposed to this, and I reached out to other police chiefs that were maybe not fully on board, but we're like, hey, let's give it a try. I'm glad you're thinking outside the box. We're willing to try anything. But for some reason, this police chief, and I hope I don't get stopped in Bedford anytime soon, I'll be in trouble. And the police chiefs association just would not get on board with this, and they kept saying it was a mandate and it would tie their hands, and I just completely disagree with
Yeah,
that
so,
statement.
I mean, yeah, let's use some common sense.
But I'll tell you, on the upside, I went to Hope Weekend.
Right, that's what I was.
Right,
gonna
so, the Dialogue Church in Manchester on Pine Street had Hope Weekend. So their minister, their pastor, Pastor Steve, was actually a drug dealer at one time. He grew up in an environment where he didn't know that people didn't do drugs. It was his way of life. He was testifying that his stepfather would be doing crack while he was sitting on his lap, and he just thought this is what people did. He had no idea really that this was abnormal. And then he found his way, well, he became very ill from doing so many drugs, and the doctor basically told his dad that if he doesn't get clean, he's not going to be here. So he found his way sober. It took him a couple of years, and now he's out testifying. But what he did was he reached out to a lot of community helpers. There was a home for families with mothers and children of abuse or of drug abuse, and the New Horizons. There were all kinds of people there that set up booths that were willing to extend a hand and help and say, hey, we're here if you need us. And I think if you go to Hope Weekend or the Dialogue Church website, there's a lot of them listed there. But it was really great to see the entire community come together. I think they had over 500 people between Saturday service and Sunday. They invited elected officials from Manchester or the area to come on in and pray with them and talk to other people. And it was really a great weekend. And I think that if we are seriously going to get a grasp on this thing, it comes back to the community, because you've just got kids that are just wandering out there and really need something to grab a hold of. I mean, the family unit is not what it once was. No. And you have these kids looking for some kind of connection to somebody, and I think that's where a lot of this happens. I know some of it stems from opioid use, from pain medications, and, but it still comes from people not having a connection.
And similar, last summer, I attended the Gospel Baptist Church for a political event in Manchester also. And there's a person there in that church that also was a former addict.
Right.
And he runs the RU Addiction Recovery through that church, and he takes people and does the same thing. And rumanchester.com, that's the letter RU, manchester.com, and you can find out more about this. And they take people and go through step programs and from the court system and
Right.
whatnot, and try to help.
And we also have the county budget coming up.
Right.
So that's, I don't know if you got a glimpse of it. It came in the mail yesterday or today.
I'm on one of the subcommittees for the Sheriff's Department.
So there will be discussion again about the county court, the drug court in Manchester. And I came under a little bit of heat last time about that.
What I heard, because I'm out on the drug forum here in Litchfield, and at the last meeting we had, was last month, I found out that the drug court is actually getting usage in Nashua.
Yeah.
And the can't think of the name of the place, but there is an organization there in Nashua that it's finally filling up their beds. Also, I understand the state-run hospitals finally got nurses, so they'll be available. But again, people need to know where these things are and where to go.
Right. So this is, I took some flack for voting against the drug court, and I think I probably will again. So I know Nashua is getting some use out of it, but this is what it breaks down to pretty much across the state. There's room for 40 people in the drug court system. Right. It's not a court like you go to this particular place. It's not a physical location. It's a system. So you walk in and you can plead down and then say, well, I'll go through the drug court, so I'll go for rehab and, instead of going to jail. So the problem is some of these people have committed crimes against other people. They weren't just caught with drugs. They've stolen from people. So they're just trying to get out of going to jail. That's not ever going to get you clean and sober. You need to decide that you want to get sober before that works. So there's room for 40 people. Across the state, the drug courts are only half filled. So now you get 20. You're staffed for 40. You only have 20, but you're still staffed for 40. it's roughly $450,000 a year to run a drug court. So then out of that 20, only 10 make it through. The other 10 end up back in jail. So only 10 make it through. Out of that 10, 27% end up back in the system. So you're talking about $450,000 for 7 people. I would rather put that money into beds.
Right, yeah. And they're going to be, and what I've heard, I mean, the Hillsborough County Jail is going to be closed soon.
Is it?
Well, the Women's Prison, and that's going to be moved, so it's going to be an empty place. And I mentioned that because I think in New Jersey, they took one of the empty jails and made it. The problem is people don't realize how long it takes
To get,
to get.
it's 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, depending on how much into it.
Yeah.
And no, it's 3 months and you're fine. No, you're not. You're gonna have
There was a neuroscientist that came out and said that the brain rewires when they use opioids or heroin, and it takes 3 years to rewire it back, so you don't have that addiction. 3 years.
yeah, I remember a couple of years ago we actually had somebody come to the State House, a psychiatrist,
Yep.
and came and talked, and what some people have addictive personalities. Any little trauma, and they'll get addicted with something,
Right.
alcohol or even marijuana, and then move up because their dopamine, normal dopamine in their brain is low. So it raises it. The problem with drugs is you keep getting the threshold and you keep that going higher and higher and higher and higher. One of the problems, though, we do have people, and I know some, that will be on opioids, for example, until they die. And we know how that works. They're going to need more and more. The problem is we have legislators trying to legislate how much doctors can give.
Yep.
So we have people that don't know anything at all what they're talking about, trying to legislate, tell doctors you can only give so much. I mean, so what are these people going to do that need those drugs?
Well, yeah.
To live. So
Cancer patients and people that live in chronic pain.
chronic pain continues. So what are they going to do? I need to get out of bed. I need to,
Right.
So, hey, go buy heroin. I mean, it's so
Right.
the stupidity of legislators and the governor too. Well, and I know doctors complaining because I can't give the medicine.
There's actually a doctor coming to the State House. He'll be speaking at Reps Hall on Monday at 10 a.m. if anybody's interested in checking that out. I don't know if it'll be live streamed or not, but you can certainly go up there and see what a doctor has to say about this. It's very complicated. It's very sad.
Yeah.
There's no easy solution. Like I said, for $450,000 of taxpayer dollars, I would rather see that go to more beds and more rehab than to drug court.
Also, no, the church in Litchfield, the community fellowship church, I believe, right up on here on 3A. They've had a couple of programs too and I believe they're also going to have a walkathon coming next month early for making money and getting awareness out. So there are churches you can find information out on the drug thing.
Yeah,
We
they have a
mentioned
lot of,
your Dialogue Church
yep,
in Manchester.
and they
the
have
Gospel
outreach to
Baptist
other people.
Church, and
Yep.
the RUManchester.com but that's a nationwide addiction recovery thing.
And we also have 211. We have that information system. If you call 211, it's the New Hampshire information system, and say, I need a rehab, they will help you. They will help you find a rehab.
Great. Hey, I didn't know that.
That's the resource that we have here in New Hampshire.
learned something
I think it's
today.
underutilized. Obviously, you didn't know.
Right.
But you can use it for pretty much anything.
Okay, so with that, why don't we wrap this up for this session, and
We didn't even get to education,
we'll
which is
wrap
what we do.
part two. But anyway, so we'll wrap this up, and thank you for watching, and stay tuned.